Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Woodside here, the founder and your host for the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. So thank you again for being with us, spending your time with us, and thinking deeply about what it means to live life more consciously. And today I have someone who has just had an enormous impact on this field of conscious living. Steve Farrell founded with Neale Donald Walsch back in 2003, something called Humanity's Team, devoted and committed to awakening our world, to bringing this whole conversation for consciousness and conscious living more to the mainstream and more to the fore through his podcast, his streaming platform that they've all created, and just an enormous amount of initiatives that are really making a difference, impacting our world toward creating a more conscious experience for everyone. So, Steve, thank you so much for being here with me on the Conscious Living Podcast. You mind saying a little bit more for people to get to know you and maybe a little bit about your journey to where you are today?
You bet, Jackie. Well, first, thank you for having me. And I applaud this the Conscious Living Podcast, because conscious living is the whole thing. We were just talking about this in the green room before coming in, but this is the important thing right now. So I grew up with a single mom who was a legal secretary, and then there were 7 siblings, and we were in about a 1,400 square foot home.
Wow.
That means I paid for my braces in the 6th grade, and we all paid our way through college, and et cetera, et cetera. And then was called to move from where I lived, just outside of Washington, D.C., to California, right out of college. And then just kind of a couple of different jobs. And then there in 1990, I decided to be an entrepreneur and start a company with another guy, used furniture in a little executive suite. And we were at the right place at the right time, because this company, which was in digital communications, all based on the internet, right there as the internet was being born, just took off. And we grew this little company, used furniture, 2 guys, to a $75 million company in 10 years.
Wow.
And then we birthed another company inside of it called Natagy that in 3 years we grew to 75 million. So, and then there were other things. I was in business associations and things. And so where people talk about the American dream, where you go into these riches with all of the accoutrements and, the private jets and these kinds of things, I did experience that. That was what was happening in my life in the 1990s. And now in the middle of the 1990s, in 1995, I read Neale Donald Walsch's book, Conversations with God, book 1.
Sure.
So, and this was my particular door opening device to conscious living.
Yeah.
I'm guessing listeners, we all have our, big experience. There were actually many, but one maybe that was bigger than others. And this was it for me, where, of course, it talks about we're all offspring of the one, everlasting life, unlimited potential. Conscious living really is shared in its fullness, and it's no other than who that Neil's talking to,
Right.
the creator of the whole universe. So,
Yeah.
so this did color my life in a huge way, and even in the midst of this American dream thing, this was bigger, more interesting, more exciting, more compelling, more of a priority than the American dream thing, because
Wow.
what I found in the American dream thing was that it was a mirage, in the sense that my friends would climb into, a $75 million company, and okay, it's time for a $150 million company. And then, and it's a 3-person jet, and well, it's time for a 6-person jet. And it just, there's always out on the horizon.
Endless. There's always something more, right?
Bigger toy,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And then what was really challenging is many of these friends, as I looked and we talked confidentially about our partner and our marriage and our kids and worker partner relations and companies and things. These were very challenging. When we're at this doing this nosebleed growth thing, there's a price that is paid, and it's not a price that we want to pay. And so I, to make a long story short, then did have my this huge epiphany that over a period of years I lost my passion for business. I sold all of my interests. I left the business associations. I moved from Silicon Valley. I'm based in Boulder, Colorado, as you mentioned. Then with Neil Donald Walsh, I founded Humanities Team in June 2003. And here we are 18 years later. And now with these beautiful partners and colleagues all over the world that are incredibly passionate about conscious living, we're just doing wonderful things. We were sharing in the green room how wonderful it is, delicious it is to live a life that's focused on our own unfolding into higher and higher levels of conscious living, and inviting people like your listeners here today to just deeper and deeper and deeper expression in conscious living.
Beautiful. I love that. And I love what you're saying, Steve, because so many people, I think the majority of people in our world are chasing what you accomplished. They're chasing what you had. And what you found is, yeah, okay, this is great. I have the American dream. I built a company. I built another company. But then, like you said, what do I do? Just keep building companies? And where does that sense of depth and passion and satisfaction and meaning arise from? It probably wasn't going to be from building just another company. And you did that inner journey towards awakening that you now have devoted your life to. And yes, are building a company around, but in a very different way than how you were taking it on before.
Yeah, I thank goodness I paid attention in my calling, which is what we all on this, when we talk about conscious living, oh my goodness, there's some key things. This is one. It's not family, it's not friends, it's not even your marriage partner that is going to give you guidance here. You need to follow that inner calling. That there's an inner voice. It's telling you where your station in life is, and we must follow that if we're gonna have our lives unfold into this really thriving and fulfilling life.
Exactly right. People think, my life is about my portfolio or about my marriage or about my career. And until your life is about your relationship with spirit, the universe, until your life is about growing in consciousness, I like to say back to the divinity from which we came, that we were one with divinity before we took human form. And I'm glad we decided to play at the same time in human history. That we whooshed down into our human experience and our purpose here, what we are here for, no matter what we're doing on the outside, building a furniture company or doing a podcast or raising children, no matter what we're doing, our purpose needs to be to grow in consciousness, to be more loving, to be more patient, to be more accepting toward yourself and others. And that's really what we're here to do. And I just hope that people recognize that that's a lifelong journey. And even inside of that, there's still and you can have it all, right? And what is that? The Bible verse, seek first the kingdom, and the kingdom is within. And the kingdom is within, and then all these things shall be added to you. And you are really a good testament of that and how you've lived your life.
Well, that is the story of my life. And it's not, it's a story of, I believe, everybody's life. We were talking again about this just a little bit ago. In my understanding, my very fervent belief, there are no favorites here. There is, when we talk about the divinity, and the oneness, it goes by many names. We use the term the divine mostly in Humanities Team, but we work with scientists and they like to use the word cosmos and universe, and they're sovereign to one body, though.
Energy.
The same passion that Neil Donald Walsh says we're part of God, and they're saying exactly the same thing. It just, they want to use different words, and it doesn't matter the word. And what's important is what you were bringing in here, Jackie, which is this divinity from which we came, this light body. We are that. We are that. Now, I know that with all of the challenges in the world, most of us today are not living into the fullness of that. So it's a notion that we're becoming, and belonging is this journey. Even though in a sense we're already there, because that divinity is here now. Its fullness is here now. And I believe that where we're spreading this invitation of conscious living, the most important thing actually is for us each in our own very diverse ways to be the most beautiful, sublime expression of that we possibly can, so people can feel it. Because this then is the invitation. I mentioned the mirage, that was the American dream thing. This is no mirage, where we live into the fullness of this divinity, of this divine presence, where we understand we are, yes, offspring of the one, the son or daughter of the one, here now at this challenging time with all of the things going on in the world. And we just self-regulate, stay in this place of divine presence with all of the magic and miracles that happen, where we are devoted to the big agenda. And we're not putting little agendas in there, just the big agenda. Then, as you mentioned, we give unto the kingdom and all things are done unto us. There's this boomerang effect. It's extraordinary. And it's not that it's not at all why I'm doing the work. I actually surrendered and said, my will is your will. And it's unconditional. But then what happened was I felt the universe saying, and now, my will is your will. And then this virtuous circle,
exactly
takes
right.
flight, with all of the miracles, where we're just all in here as one,
Right.
doing this important work.
Yeah, Steve, do you mind if I pick up on that a little bit? I'd love to just deepen this a little, because I think that's one of the things, if you will, that if people come from a more traditional Christian background, that maybe keeps people from living consciously, because if they have an experience or a belief of God out there, that there's something I have to go figure out, something that God is going to tell me. Like you said, my will is thy will. And then as you do that, it becomes thy will is my will as well. And I think that's really important. Again, whether you want to use the word God or spirit or energy or universe, but just for simplicity's sake, God's will is my will. My will is God's will, because God is not out there. God is the animating life force of everything. So there is, we'd like to say there is no spot where God is not. God, if God is omnipresent, then this sounds so blasphemous, but we said we were going to no holds barred on this one. Then if God is everywhere, then I am God. If God is everywhere, then you are God. We are here godding. I like to use God as a verb. We are here godding on earth.
Absolutely. Well, conversations with God, this is the terminology that's used. God's talking to Neil saying, you're all godding,
You're all godding.
Just black and white right there in print. So the way it works for me is even now. So I've got windows here that I'm looking out on. There's beautiful nature. It's fall here in Boulder. You've got leaves coloring, color changes and things going on. It's gorgeous. It's extraordinary. It's sacred, as you look out on the world. And then if you look out at all of the diversity of people and the earth and the beauty, it's sacred. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And now we've got the James Webb telescope, where we're looking out into the galaxies, and it's like, oh my God, it just melts your heart as you look out at all of this. And this is the one that goes by many names. So this is the one that we're looking at, of which we're a part and an integral part. This one, don't want to get off track here into science, but the science is saying you can't have a single person pulled out of this and have the universe be what it is, that you are sovereign to this one body. You are a key puzzle piece. You are in it, and you can't take you out of it. And where you look out at all of this and you love it on that level, and you fall in love with it on that level, this is the face of the one, all of these things that I'm talking about and so much more. And then for me, you fall in love with it. And then this is what makes it easy. My will is thy will. Of course, my will is thy will. My God, the beauty of this, what is sacred here, the blessing, and it needs help. There's all of this challenge out in the world, and it's saying, and we need a little help here. So my God, now how can I not then, I'm in love with it. How can I not just give myself in service to it, that big agenda, without putting little agendas in there? And then as I understand it, this universal law kicks in where as we're giving it more and more and more of in a full unselfish way, the universe starts just pouring it back on us. So the house, the partner, the kids,
Yes.
the things that you might do, the friends, the things that start happening. In my case, humanities team, resources falling in that are very rare resources. And I'm a nonprofit, and boom, the person shows up, wants to go right to work. And that's one example of hundreds that I could share where it's just falling into place so beautifully. And my mother-in-law years ago, as she was looking at this, she said, "Steve, my God, that's a God job, is what you're describing." And I said, "Wow, I had never, that's a term I'd never thought of."
A God
Uh,
job.
a God job. She
And
says it's a,
what did she mean by that?
well, she meant by that, she said it's just falling that it's unfolding so beautifully like that, with more reach and impact, unfolding, where it just never seems to get over on its back. In Silicon Valley, most startups actually will roll over. They won't quite get there. And this, where it's a nonprofit, we don't raise any money. You're on cash flow, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing with reach and impact. How did that happen? And I tell people, I'll tell you one thing you can know for sure. It didn't happen because of me. A lot of these things, I promise you, that was not me. Maybe something working through me, and I'll call that God. But that was not me. It's not like I had all of the talent and whatever to do that, because there's so many beautiful faces. Again, people showing up with just the right expertise, with just the right heart, that can work consciously together. It's the magic of it all. And how do you describe that? My mother-in-law, I think, described it beautifully.
Yeah, it's a God job. I love that. But Steve, you have had a role in it. And in my language, bringing in science a little bit, you've created the vibratory pattern for those things to come into your life through how you think, how you feel, the conscious choices that you make, the beliefs that you've cultivated, that you're not having these default beliefs running the show. You've created the conditions for flow, or for the God job to be in your life. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit as you look at what's happened with Humanities Team, and how that has been in some ways birthed through and grown through you, not necessarily of you, but through you. So what did you do in your God self as you were Godding on earth to create those conditions for flow?
Well, the thing, of course, there's so many things that are talked about here now, because this is a wonderful time. You've got your summits and podcasts that's on conscious living. So there's a wave coming in. It's a big wave, and it's actually growing right now massively. So this is a beautiful thing. There are many people talking about this. The thing that I don't hear a lot, that is part of the equation, which I did just touch on here, is which for me brings in the just extraordinary power and extraordinary miracle power, is and you can't do it for that reason, but it's how it happens, is it's love. It's falling in love. It's yes, understanding. We work with Nassim Harriman and Jude Currivan and Bruce Lipton and all of these, and the science of this oneness is extraordinary now, and I'm sure your viewers are tuning into that now, as we come out and say, you are sovereign to one body. And if you've read the research, it's true. In fact, they look at yesterday, the three Nobel Prize winners for entanglement, right, in quantum physics. Yes. It's just going straight into it now. It's mainstreaming. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist or somebody that is in higher and higher education to understand it. It's really there for all of us. But that's just explaining how it's one. The magic for me, and what makes life so delicious, is then the falling in love part, is the just look at the beautiful faces of diversity with color of the whole earth. And when we watch the Olympics, watch those people walk in. How can you not fall in love with that? Or go out in the night sky and look at that night sky. Or right now, look out the window we have the fall and the leaves of color. How can you not fall in love with that? And that's the magic part. If we permit ourselves to fall in love with it and go, oh my God, I am a part of that, and there's a much of it that's challenged right now, and I'm in service to that. Then that's when we just, like Star Trek, we go to boom, warp level speed, light speed.
Yeah.
Then you just really, I was talking about, hit a hyperbolic curve where just extraordinary things can happen to you, and the deliciousness of life felt on just the most wonderful level happens. And falling in love, of course, is a beautiful experience. So why wouldn't we want that to happen?
To happen every day, all the time. So this brings me to another thought. One of my early spiritual teachers, Dr. David Hawkins from Sedona, Arizona, I'm sure you know his work, Power versus Force, and about 12 other seminal books on consciousness. He once said that until you can gaze into the trash heap, until you can gaze into the garbage dump pile and see the beauty and perfection there, you've not grown in consciousness. And I loved that. And I mean, this sounds really hokey, but I do that sometimes. I literally will stare into my trash and be like, there is God too. And really look to see the perfection of that. But what I want to, I preface my question with that thought, because we're talking about the beautiful things, looking out in Colorado, and I'm here in New England, same thing. The foliage is beautiful. I've got a lake in front of me. It's reflecting back. The love, the falling in love. But Steve, I also had one of my best friends die of cancer on Saturday. And she was one of the most vibrant, engaged, lively, her laughter would light up a room. And she suffered terribly at the end. And she, she was taken from this life. And that's just my own personal road right now. There are listeners right now who perhaps their children are sick, or, I think about these parents, Steve, that have lost children in these horrific school shootings. So I don't disagree with what you said. I just want to make it real and practical, even when it's hard and ugly. Like David Hawkins says, until you can look into the trash heap and see the perfection and the beauty there. So how do we sit with those really hard, painful things, like my friend dying of cancer, these parents who've lost children in school shootings, or any of those, someone who got walked out on yesterday, somebody who their child went to prison last week? This is life. We're all here having the human experience.
Right.
Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, no, let's do. Conversations with God, which I shared, that was my big device there. There are 9 books in the series, and it shares that the soul actually determines when it's going to come home, which it's a hard thing to figure when you look at World War I and World War II and these various cancer and these various other things. But it's saying, no, the soul actually is, it signs up for, in the case of some of these mass shootings and these and horrible cancers and things, that the soul actually signs up for it for reasons that we don't know, including that that word will spread and people will look at it and they might be transformed in some way by reading about that experience. It might become an educational device, for some people. And that our context, part of our challenge here on the earth as Gaians, is we think in a very limited way. With this notion of everlasting life is really, it's hard to really fully get ourselves around that. This notion that, there is no such thing as death. It's a continuation day that we're going on to. There is no such thing as death. And of course, there are things that we love even right now dearly, your friend that you're talking about, our partner, our kids, our pet, some of our friends that you love dearly. But if we really are living consciously, what this podcast is about, into the fullness of living consciously, then the notion of a continuation day where you're going on to something, the heavenly realm, as I understand it, boy, we could talk for hours, so in another program about that, but it's so extraordinary that it just actually blows the wheels off of what our experience is here on the earth.
Yeah.
So you're going into that extraordinary place, and then, continuing on to whatever life experience that you want to have after that. So I think that's That's a huge thing to keep in mind. Now, let me share in my own life too, even with all of the things that are so beautiful. I grew up with 7 siblings. One of them passed away in a car accident shortly after I moved to California when I was just in my early 20s.
Oh,
I have a son. Both of my kids were adopted at birth, open adoptions. My son, who works here, the lower floor on our home, is all humanities team. He has his office here. And he has a separation anxiety that's been pretty extreme for most of his life. Now we have resources around him, including those that can heal the body's energy fields, and therapists and things working with him. And he's really coming along well, but he's had a very challenging time. So that was put right here in front of me. And of course, what the divine shares with me and all of us, I believe, where we tune in is our experiences are exactly perfect, actually, for us. They're tailor-made for who we are and where we are in the evolutionary cycle. And I was very clear, you were put here as Dylan's dad, and he is your son. And there is a combination here that is really working just perfect. So I never felt like, oh, poor me or something, or this didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen. I've been very clear, no, I'm right exactly where I'm supposed to be. So, so where we have these challenges, that's if we can believe it's true, as I do, that when this saying, everything's in divine order sounds kind of trite, but actually I believe it's the ultimate truth.
Yeah. And I love the phrase too, that life is always unfolding for me. It's not happening to me. It's happening for me, and looking to find the blessing. I love that my son is also adopted. We share that. And my son was adopted when he was 14 months, also has an anxiety condition. And we continue to work with that. I think my son is a little younger than yours. He's 17. But seeing the beauty in that and seeing that this is what we signed up for. I mean, that's really the best way of saying it. So when people are struggling to I guess, again, Steve, what we're talking about is consciously choosing what I'm going to believe. And if you're consciously choosing to think, why is this happening to me? And I didn't do anything to deserve this, or what did I do to deserve this? I must be some bad, awful person. Recognize that's just a thought. That's just a belief. And there's no truth to it.
Yeah. The conscious journey, really, it's self-regulation is huge. There's
right?
So many different dimensions of self-regulation. We're talking about one, but where we really are seeing the perfection in what's here.
Yeah.
And self-regulation in its most sublime levels, I think, is this deep, deep love that we experience, we feel for ourselves, and then we also have for life around us, and where that whole thing is going on. That's where, and of course, the real masters that have walked the planet, we can see, oh my God, the color in that, and the fullness and texture of that, where it's fully lived out.
Yeah. Yeah. The masters that have walked among us, like you.
Well, I don't profess to be, but I've given my life fully.
Yeah, Steve, I do. I teach a piece on today. What we have is mystics without monasteries. People who are living their lives as householders, as they were called back in the day, mystics without monasteries, committed to our spiritual and conscious awakening. In this lifetime, and we're out living our lives, and in the grocery stores and in the restaurants and in the business offices. That's what conscious living is all about. You don't have to go hide yourself away in some cloistered living in order to live consciously.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, if in its fullness, just right wherever you are, right here, right now, that's the thing, is we're carrying it around, and in our everlasting life, that's the thing, is just as we're doing this self-regulating, if we can get into this place of really, we're not having to walk into something or back into something. It's right here, right now. Start with each of us, if we can know how loved we are, because I think this is what can pull us, where some say it's the pain that pulls us, and that's maybe what their experience has been. For me, it's the love that pulls us, where I feel into, as a young man, what the divine's unbelievable love for me and every single person and the earth. And we just put a raincoat over our head, where I don't experience that, I'm feeling I need to eat this, I need to go here, where we just kind of put a lid over ourselves and we don't experience that unbelievable love that's here for each and every one of us. And so for me, that's kind of how the thing got
Yeah.
turned.
Well, Steve, what gave you access to that experience of being loved by the divine? I think, again, it's one of those notions that a lot of people talk about or have heard about or have read about, but you're talking about a visceral experience of it. What opened up that portal for you?
I honestly believe that it is here for each person, even right in this very moment. I
In
really
this moment,
do.
yeah.
Like, so for me in meditation, where they say just go into stillness and the quiet, I can't. There's love beaming down on me.
Oh,
So I'm in. That's what meditation is for me, where this extreme, extraordinary love is just pulsating down on me and everybody. And that's what I know. So in the afterlife, okay, let's go here because it might explain it. I'm sure that everybody here has probably dealt with some mediums that are very talented, and the veil is lifted, and there are bridges to the afterlife with all of the different afterlife that are there, family members, but the divine herself, masters, etc. And the afterlife is there are people who've left the planet just in the worst conditions, addicted to drugs, all of these things, and these people are lit up. They're in the most extraordinary place, talking from the most unbelievable wisdom, loved beyond measure. I mean, that's what's coming through with all mediums, where we're talking to higher vibration, elements or loved ones that have passed.
yeah, yeah.
So that's what's real. And somehow we just lose the perception of that. We fall into these earthly perceptions where I need this, I need that, and we just kind of we get up in our left brain there, and then we really get in this. Then we can enter into the American dream thing of, I'm gonna go chase the top line and bottom line and riches and things. Until we don't anymore, because if you've had my experience, you say, "Oh my God, wow! If people only knew, that
Right.
is the place that we want to go."
Wow, that is absolutely beautiful, Steve. And having that, I will say, I don't know that I'm walking around with a constant experience of love. And hearing you say that opens up that possibility for me. I walk around with a sense that life is beautiful and magical. And perhaps that's my experience of it. I look around and I just just it's just amazing, Steve. Out of the billions of years of evolution and human evolution, here we are, you and I, right here in this exact time, doing this exact thing. What are the chances of that? Like, that to me is just one of the multiple expressions of how beautiful life is, how perfect it is. It couldn't be any other way than for you and I to be right here, right now, and for our listeners who are with us to be right here, right now, driving that car that they're driving or sitting at the desk that they're sitting at. That is the perfection of the universe.
Yes, and also just for you and me and listeners, because they have their own experiences of this, but the divine is using us when we are truly living consciously right now, Jackie, is the divine is speaking through you and speaking through me, and just and she's saying, trying to talk in a way that is waking up and giving people just this fuller experience of what conscious living is, and just with an invitation that is so bold, that people might walk away and just think about it for a little bit and just say, maybe I'm already living consciously, but I think I'm going to stretch and lean into it a bit more.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep climbing the stairwell here, into what its fuller possibility is.
So beautiful. I want to share one more thing that had a profound impact on me. It was a book written by a woman who was a victim of the Holocaust. Her name was Etty, E-T-T-Y, Hillesum, Etty Hillesum. And the book, published posthumously, was called The Diary of an Interrupted Life by Etty Hillesum. And she's being hailed as a modern day mystic. She was a Jewish woman who was living in Amsterdam. And because of her role, she actually had the opportunity of going into what's it called? The prisons, into where the Jewish people were being sent. And then Yeah. And then she would actually be released and go do her job and then be sent back. So she went back and forth several times. And she had the opportunity to run away, to hide. And she said, why would I do that? How will I ever, I love this. How will I be able to help God out? Because I recognize that there's really nothing God can do for us as Jews any longer. But if I can look into the eyes of my captor and find the love in my heart for him, I will make this world a more hospitable place. And I thought, wow, right. Yeah, exactly. I highly recommend that book, by the way,
Oh my
Steve.
gosh. Yeah. And
The
Nelson
Diary of
Mandela.
an Interrupted Life. It was an extraordinary, extraordinary book she's an extraordinary writer. And I have to say that changed me, because I think if she could have that experience of knowing she had to, and I love that phrase, help God out. I actually use that in my teaching as well. Get in action. Don't just sit around thinking good thoughts. Help God out by how you're living your life. And if she could have that thought of, I need to go and look my captor in the eye and find his humanity, that shred of his humanity, that shred of his soul, and find love there, then I'll be helping God out to make this whole world a more hospitable place.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a beautiful story. And I'm sure that's a powerful book. And we work with all faith traditions and people that are that don't have that don't have faith at all, or that would call themselves atheists and agnostics and things. So I grew up in the Catholic Church, and so of course, the Jesus story, where he was used in that way, and he had to walk through that garden, there the evening before, but he knew, I think, exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to be used now in the most extraordinary way, and boy, look at how it changed the planet. So. How far are we willing to go with this? But where we understand it's everlasting life, and how we're going to be held as our consciousness then moves across that light tunnel into this disembodied realm.
Yeah.
I think it does make it easier where we see these kinds of examples. And if the divine decides to use us that way before the end of our life, then here we go.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And, I love this whole notion of helping God out. So, I think about Eddie Hillesum writing that when she was, a captive in the Holocaust. And then I think about the person who's complaining about their office mate, and they just can't get along. And the question that I'll, kind of leave our listeners with as we have this dialogue is, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Because let's face it, Steve, living a conscious life is not for the faint of heart. It requires spiritual and psychological, you said self-regulation, I would say spiritual and psychological maturity. And people have to be willing to do the work to attain that kind of spiritual and psychological maturity that is if you will, the heartbeat of conscious living.
Yeah. The beautiful thing is, and I think for a lot of people, it's right there as an invitation, and sometimes it's grabbed as an invitation, sometimes it's left, is that we actually are, this is much more of a journey into deliciousness than into sacrifice. As we start the journey, this is a really tough one, because we go, oh my God, I really want to do it. But like I was married, and I had to go to my wife and say, Stephanie, I'm so sorry. I was living this tech rock star, with all of this. And I said, I don't know that I'll ever earn another paycheck in my life. I don't know where this will lead me, but I know this is where I need to go. And I hope we can be together, because I love you so much. And fortunately, God had guided me to this woman, and she could, and we did. And then all of these wonderful things happened. So yes, we have to become more mature in this. We have to, or we're not, don't have to do anything, but we have
the opportunity to.
The opportunity to just, where we say, I'm going to give my life in service, or you could even use the word surrender, but surrender in the sublime way. And when we do, it's not at all what many people want to think, where we're going to give up all of this stuff and now we're going to have to live in a cave somewhere. It really, in my experience, doesn't work that way. Instead, life becomes incredibly delicious. And I would just say to your boy, if there's one thing I could say only here, to your listeners, it would be, do follow that still small voice within you and let it guide you. It will, I promise you, you can trust it, and it will take you to beautiful places, not only for you, but everybody whose life you touch.
Absolutely. That really is such a gift. So, Steve, that's wonderful. Just so much wisdom and depth in this conversation. I know people are going to want to be in touch with you, Humanities Team. Where are the best places for people to know you, see you, follow you, and Humanities Team?
Humanitiesteam.org would be the best place to go, with a Y, humanitiesteam.org. And we've got all these, we've got a Global Oneness Summit coming up. It's free for 10 days. We have free programs. We do free programs actually all week long, live broadcasts and things. And you can see all of that on the humanitiesteam.org website. Beautiful.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here, Steve. Again, I just want to acknowledge you for the impact you're having on the world, for the leadership, the spiritual and enlightened conscious leadership you are providing to your company, and then by extension to our world, by just the millions of lives around the world that you are touching through the work that Humanities Team is doing to create a better world for all of us. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.